Yep. Hi, welcome back. This is Greg, and this is day 7. I've been talking about ADHD, and I've been jumping around all over the place, as you probably noticed. That's the ADHD way, after all, isn't it? So, without further ado, we will I'll recap quickly what we've been talking about, and then I'll talk about symptoms, more specifically some uncommon symptoms which are sometimes overlooked. So on the first day I just introduced myself, and on the second day we looked at some of the facts. I talked a bit about ADHD and the fact that it's a neurological disorder. We talked about the terms ADHD and some of the common factors, genetic, environment, things like that. It's a legitimate diagnosis. On day 3, we talked about some well-known public figures and people from history who have or had or were thought to have had ADHD. On day 4, we talked about some of the positive benefits of ADHD and looked at some of the the upside of hyperfocus and things like that. Day 5, it was just a recap to see how we're going and how we were doing, and I shared I'd been struggling with hyperfocus. Day 6, yesterday, we did another recap, what ADHD stands for. I broke down the acronym into pieces, and so that's the end of your quick recap. So back to today's installment, and again, I'm jumping all over the place, and those bloody squirrels, ADHD rabbit holes. All right. So I call this series Unlocking the Mysteries of ADHD. And I'm going to talk again about symptoms of ADHD and then some of the more uncommon ones. So without further ado, let's so high. Some of the symptoms, what we do know, difficulty paying attention is a very common paying attention to be a problem. Sometimes it's a challenge for people with ADHD to follow through on instructions and stay organized or complete tasks. Frequently lose things. I'm always losing things. I think I've lost them and they're in my pocket. Very distracted very easily. Oh, look, a squirrel, by external stimulation. Struggle with maintaining attention during conversations and activities. Sometimes we seem to zone out. We're not really doing that. It's just our mind's working a million miles an hour, and we just maybe add an idea or something, and it can get mistaken for not paying attention or not being interested or being rude, and on the flip side of that, impulsivity we talked about already, but just to touch on that, people with ADHD are often we can sometimes act without considering the consequences, but it's very important to remember that those actions are not intentional. Often we're unaware that we're doing them, so we should be a bit kinder. If we've got ADHD, we need to be kind to ourselves and acknowledge that our symptoms sometimes can cause us to behave in certain ways without the intent of doing so. It is common for people to act that way without thinking when they've got ADHD. So that said, we might struggle with things like interrupting people during conversations. Maybe we struggle waiting our turn for something or engaging in impulsive behavior. We might talk too much or interrupt. Risk taking is a big factor with ADHD for a lot of people. Taking risks, dangerous things, without even thinking about it. Sometimes ADHD displays as hyperactive symptoms, although not everyone will have that side of it, and sometimes it causes problems, fidgeting and squirming. I think I shared, my granddad used to say, "What's wrong with you, laddie? You can't sit still, you got worms in your pants." Restlessness, inability to listen, stay put in one place, do what you're expected to do, talking excessively, I've already said that. Might find it hard engaging in things that require quiet time. And understanding those symptoms can help people maybe understand the condition a little bit more. If you suspect that you might have attention deficit disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, see a professional for a diagnosis. Anything that I say is not medical advice. I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn. I'm not a doctor. You might not get that reference. So what are some of the symptoms that might get overlooked? Well, there's a lot of conditions that get overlooked in health and mental health, especially. We know that there's hyperfocus, but maybe we might have problems with time management, always getting late to appointments, forgetting when appointments are, we're late for a date, getting to work late. Sometimes we can appear to be emotionally, our emotional senses. We can be kind of overly sensitive, perhaps. Sleep problems, we might not sleep enough, we might sleep too much. Difficulty controlling our emotions. Again, a lot of these will overlap, so don't on their own. They're not, they're not indicative of a diagnosis, but difficulty controlling our emotions. Low tolerance for boredom. We get kind of fed up a lot if we're not interested in something. We will zone out. Low tolerance for the boredom. Sometimes people can have problems with impulsive shopping. That kind of goes with the risk taking and the impulsive behavior. Oftentimes, someone with ADHD, they'll do something to cause a bit of excitement or a bit of stimuli because we're like crying out for that inside. Sometimes it can be mood swings. You can be over organized, absolutely meticulous, not a thing out of place, almost obsessive. Managing your feelings, we talked about, having anxiety and depression go hand in hand. Sleepless nights, we've said, relationship problems. Substance abuse disorder is actually it can be a thing, and I've had a problem over the years with substance abuse, with inhalant abuse, and it's absolutely indicative. It's another kind of sign that with the ADHD, being very sensitive or having anxiety, difficulty forming or maintaining relationships and friendships. Very oftentimes ADHD will coexist with depression and bipolar, anxiety, substance abuse. We talked about Tourette's disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, conduct disorders. We talked about losing track of time, forgetting homework, thinking we had more time, doing things at the 11th hour. We can have problems with executive function, poor recollection of names, information, places, dates, times, anniversaries, people's names, how we knew them. And I struggle with that specifically, having the ADHD. But then the brain injury, it makes it really challenging. Learning problems, oftentimes dyslexia will go hand in hand with ADHD. Trouble memorizing, certain things. Forgetting our school assignments or work assignments, poor written expression, not very good at listening, reading comprehension can be poor handwriting, very impulsive learning style, the hyperfocus and time management, of course, almost like a time blindness. So someone who's got ADHD, someone might say, we only have now, our clock only registers now. And someone might say, your homework's due, or don't forget we're going on that date for that celebration with Jimmy tonight at 7:00. And all we hear is not now. It's like now and not now. And, in an hour or in 2 hours just means not now. And so it can be very much of a challenge. Total lack of time awareness and losing track of things around us. Forgetting what we've just done. One of the things I struggle with tremendously, I have a monitored dispenser for my medicine. Well, it's not monitored as in with a call center, but there's an alarm goes off and I press the button and my medicine comes out. It's kind of cool. But the thing of it is, somehow between pressing that button, getting my medicine, walking across to my seat and sitting down, and then the next thing I know, did I take my medicine or didn't I? And honestly, I can't remember, and it's frustrating and it's scary as fuck. Excuse my French, it's very frightening. So having trouble focusing on, anything other than now. The past doesn't exist, the future doesn't exist. It's just now or not now. Now is front and center with ADHD, and attaining focus for a long period of time. The hypersensitivity and emotional sensitivity, sometimes we're seen as insensitive. Sensory processing disorders, we can be overly sensitive to smells and noises and things of that nature, touch, and kind of an overwhelm to the sensory system, rejection, sensitive dysphoria, or sensitivity to criticism. I talked about this the other day. I welcome creative criticism, but if someone kind of intentionally bashes us, or maybe even if they don't, and we take it as a slight, it can really bring us down. Whereas someone else would be like, okay, and it'll roll off, and it can really, really get to us. But conversely, if someone pays a compliment, man, we can run marathons and marathons and marathons just on that. Sleep problems, the sleep disturbances are talked about. Fatigue can worsen attention difficulties, tired all the time. Although you would think having ADHD, being as though that stimulant medicine is often the first line of treatment, it affects people with ADHD differently. So does caffeine. So fatigue can worsen during times where you're struggling with your attention. My batteries can get worn down super fast, and it drains me. And yet at the same time, you can't sleep at night. Sometimes difficulty controlling those emotions. Some people might have emotional outbursts, especially children. Emotional dysregulation. Spending impulsivity, that goes with the risk-taking behavior. A lot of people are compulsive spenders, gamblers, sexaholics and gamblers, stuff like that, craving the excitement. That's why a good job for people with ADHD is things like race car driver, trader on the commodities exchange, things like that, exciting things, because of that stimulation. And actually, with the spending impulsively, there was a 2015 study. A 2015 study tracked a 2015 study. They tracked the psychosocial development of random teens in upstate New York for 29 years, and they found that impulse buying, especially on items that they couldn't afford, that people couldn't afford, was very common with people who had ADHD. The interruption, being socially inappropriate, and that kind of goes with the interrupting conversations. It can be mood swings, sometimes severe. Structural manage your feelings. Relationship problems of all kinds, both love life and non-love life, other relationships. Repeated patterns of failed relationships, divorces, because it puts a lot of stress on relationships. Misunderstandings in relationships and things like that. Eating disorders, substance misuse we talked about. Although substance abuse doesn't affect every adult, but a 2021 consensus statement showed that people with ADHD are more likely than others to experience substance misuse, and it may involve alcohol, tobacco, or other drugs. Mine was inhalants as well as alcohol and tobacco, which I still do. The research isn't clear on what the link is between substance misuse and ADHD. A theory is that self-medication, or it could be, craving the stimuli. Maybe the misuse is an attempt to control symptoms, maybe hoping to improve focus, improve sleep, relieve anxiety. Working memory deficit, you already know you've got, mood disorders and stuff. We talked about the coexisting conditions, stress and anxiety, restlessness. That kind of goes with that, boredom. Conversely, can be very, driven by a motor, very easily distracted and frustrated, overlook details, sometimes seen as irresponsible, uncaring, inattentive, disorganized, lazy, forgetful. Forgetting when you put things. I forgot I talked about that part already. And forgetfulness can be serious because in relationships it can be confused with, carelessness, not caring about the other person, insensitive, mean, cruel, lack of intelligence, stupid, dumb. If people aren't familiar with the diagnosis, procrastination on tasks. That kind of goes with it's either now or it's not now. So we don't, not completing tasks, not doing things on time, showing up late, ignoring assignments, not doing homework if we think it's boring, or stuff at work if it's boring, we wait till the last minute. You may feel a yearning to keep moving, tapping your feet, stuff like that, fidgeting, shifting in your seat, can't sit still. Self-image can be a thing with people with ADHD, and often we can be hypercritical of ourselves, which can lead to very negative self-image, and that's due in part to difficulties concentrating, excuse me, as well as other symptoms that might affect school, work, relationships. We oftentimes can view those difficulties as a personal failure or an underachievement, which can cause very negative self feelings. Motivation, you might be open to doing everything at once, so you might feel unmotivated, and it's very common. You see it in children with ADHD who find it hard to do schoolwork or focus on it, but it also happens that with adults, coupled with the procrastination and the difficulty organizing skills, it can make it hard for someone to finish a project because of the hyperactivity or the opposite of it. Physical health, ADHD, and the related things that go with having ADHD. Sometimes it can lead a person to neglect their physical health as well as their mental health. Symptoms that may affect your ability to physically take care of yourself could be, the emotional things, the lack of motivation, especially if you're struggling with some of those areas to begin with. So maybe you're not taking care of your physical health, doing what you're supposed to. Compulsive eating, eating an imbalanced diet, forgetting to eat, not exercising. I forget to eat all the time. It's not unusual. Now one of my health aides, she'll make sure I eat at least once while she's here, but it's not unusual at all for me to get to 7, 8, 9 at night and I'm not feeling well. I realized I've not eaten or even been to the bathroom. So we are eating an imbalanced diet, overeating, undereating, forgetting forgetting medication. See, I forgot what I was saying. Maybe you find it hard to stay in a job for a long time. Lots of employers jumping from employer to employer, the race of thoughts, intrusive thinking, choice paralysis. Do I do this or do I do that? You're at the restaurant. Do you want the soup or the salad? The horror of it. Oh my God, the freaking horror of it. Oh no, do I want soup? Do I want salad? Oh my God, we're going to be here all night. The low self-esteem, the guilt, the shame. You've got the executive dysfunction, cognitive and mental abilities that take us, that can take us and direct actions, controlling our behaviors. Some examples of the executive function problems: the planning, problem solving, motivating ourselves, children struggling with self-restraint, being self-aware, emotional regulation, things like that. Jaw clenching, feeling restless all the time, making bad decisions, or I said it organized and miraculously the opposite. So anyway, that's kind of me. I rambled a little bit. It's important to remember that ADHD is a legitimate medical condition. It requires understanding and compassion and appropriate treatment to help individuals reach their full potential. Tomorrow I'll talk a bit about diagnosis and the different diagnosis, what that means, but it'll be on diagnosis anyway. If this resonated with you in any way, please leave a comment if you feel inclined. This video will be available later on the channel, and there'll be an article that accompanies this. I'll try and get it finished today, the article that is. So leave a comment, that would be gratefully appreciated. It's not easy to create if you've got an ADHD or a brain injury, which I do, and other challenges. Hoping that making these broadcasts is good for my recovery, Hopefully they can help somebody else, or someone can learn something. Click subscribe to get notified when I do another video. Smash the bell, and remember, take care of your mind, and we will see you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye.